Hi everyone, welcome to this session. My name is Michael. I'm CEO and co-founder of Education Ecosystem. I have a background in Python and Django. I'm very happy to speak at CDCon. My topic is interoperability in cloud-native continuous delivery. For this topic, we will discuss how standards can be set to make different CI/CD systems interoperable. The idea behind interoperability of CI/CD systems is that different CI/CD systems can work together even if they are from different service providers, right? And it does not matter whether the CI/CD systems are open source and free or they are commercial CI/CD systems, right? We are going to talk about the challenges that make it very hard to make different CI/CD systems interoperable, right? We'll go over the issues. We'll just review them and see how each of these issues could be resolved. Let's start. So what is interoperability? When we talk about interoperability, what are we trying to say with it? What are we trying to achieve? Why is interoperability between different CI/CD tools, CI/CD processes important, right? So interoperability is an idea of significant value to any open source community, any private enterprise, or any government organization that is dealing with CI/CD processes every day, because CI interoperability helps every organization, every unit to kind of avoid some of the common problems that that is very known in CI/CD environments, such as duplicated information across different teams, lack of cohesion between developer teams, existence of several tools that do the same thing, right, that are used by different team members, because the people have background or experience using these tools, and they don't want to change or switch to other tools, right? If there is no interoperability, what happens in any CI/CD environment is the team loses control and the team works inefficient, right? And so interoperability in CI/CD is a must because it helps with cooperation. It helps with it speeds up the continuous integration and development and deployment process. And interoperability is also of significance because it helps a team, right, to accomplish its business goals faster and efficient. So let's talk about what kind of types of interoperability exist, right? We are going to talk about the two different types of interoperability. So let's talk about the types of interoperability or the levels of interoperability. So there are two types of interoperability if you want to kind of break it down. One is semantic interoperability and one is technical interoperability. If you want, you can also call it partial interoperability and full or complete interoperability, right? Partial interoperability is if two CI/CD systems, for example, can kind of exchange information or exchange data, right? Or communicate with each other because they have the same programming language. Basically, they are built with Java or they are built with Ruby. And so that's it's partial interoperability is more like limited interoperability, right? And it's limited by specific variable or constraint. And the constraint could be they must have the same programming language or they must be from the same service provider, right? And that's the concept of semantic interoperability. So it's kind of you have interoperability between two different systems, but it's not 100% interoperability in all cases. Then there is the full or complete interoperability. The full or complete interoperability is you have two different systems. They can be written in two different languages, Java, Ruby, Python, PHP, or they can be from two different service providers, or they can be from two different open source communities, all right? And this CI/CD system still communicate with each other, right? Can still exchange information as if they were built by the same service provider, right? So those are the levels of interoperability that exist. So just think of it as semantic as limited, and technical interoperability as like, unlimited, or you can also call it partial and complete, interoperability. So between these two extremes, there are also like, there are also like ranges between them, but you can kind of like look at limited and you can look at full operability. The ideal place we want to be, like with all CI/CD systems, is that all of them are technically interoperable. That means they are fully interoperable, no matter which programming language, whether it's written in Java, whether it was written by a Ruby team, whether it was written by a Python team, whether it was written by a PHP team, or a C++ team, whatever. We want different CI/CD systems to be completely interoperable. So now, let's talk a bit about the CI/CD tools that exist today and to what extent they lack interoperability. So we're just going to talk about the different types of CI/CD systems, the different vendors and communities that exist, and how they contributed to making it hard to achieve interoperability in CI/CD pipelines. Right now, I'm not going to name any. I'm intentionally not going to put on the slides any names of any CI/CD tools, because I'm not recommending any. But I assume all of you know like all the different CI/CD tools like Jenkins, JenkinsX, MS Azure DevOps, AWS Pipeline, Microsoft VSTS, Bamboo, GitLab, CodeShip, CodeFresh, TeamCity. I'm sure I've forgotten some other CI/CD systems. Now, the core problem with achieving interoperability when it comes to CI/CD pipelines is we have basically two types of CI/CD systems. Some of them are open source, some of them are commercial, right? So the open source CI/CD systems, it will not be hard to kind of make them interoperable, right? It will not be too hard because the people building those systems, they don't have any like commercial interest. They're not doing it to kind of make a profit. So it could be like a Ruby team that is like interested in launching like a Ruby-based CI/CD system, and then there's like a PHP team doing the same thing, and there's like a Python team doing the same thing, right? But the CI/CD Foundation could talk to all these teams, right, and define standards, for them that they can follow to make all the different CI/CD tools that they are building with different languages, like completely interoperable. The big problem actually appears if we are talking about commercial CI/CD tools, right? Because commercial CI/CD tools, the companies building these CI/CD tools, they are building them with intention to make money. They are building them with intention to make their CI/CD tool different than competitors. They are building them with intention to make their CI/CD tool have more value than open source CI/CD tools, right? So they are also building them in a way that they have a competitive advantage in the market. So the core premise of existence of this commercial CI/CD tool companies is like differentiating themselves from every other CI/CD tool that exists, right? So if a company is main goal is to differentiate itself from every other CI/CD tool, what is going to happen is this vendor, this service provider, is not going to be really, open in, making his CI/CD system interoperable with other CI/CD systems, right? They want to keep it separate. They want to kind of like lock in companies, and they want companies to stay after they start using their CI/CD system. They want, as soon as the development team has kind of deployed their CI/CD system in their code pipelines, that they can switch, right? So they want to build like highest transaction switching costs. And that is actually one of the main problems that, one of the main challenges that exist is that it's going to be very hard, or it's going to be very impossible for to kind of like make commercial CI/CD systems interoperable with each other, and also with open source systems, right? Because the vendors are not willing to kind of like open up the back end of their software, or they don't have any interest to kind of in general make their CI/CD system, the solutions they are selling, interoperable with open source solutions, right? Because they fear that if they do that, then their solutions become obsolete. That they will lose like market share, that they will lose money, and they will kind of like run out of business, right? So this is like the main challenge that is actually facing the CI/CD community and CI/CD foundation. So even though there are different vendors, these vendors don't have any kind of like inertia to kind of make their systems interoperable, right? There is right now no incentive that is offered to them to make their systems interoperable, right? But the other challenge that is also faced with open source side is that the open source guys, they normally develop their software, they develop it as a part-time job, and they don't have a lot of financial resources, right? So if they have to make their systems, their CI/CD systems, interoperable, it means they will need to spend more time, they need to dedicate more resources in development of their CI/CD tools, right? Now, so there is no financial incentive for them as well to spend time making their CI/CD tools like interoperable, right? So even if they are approached by the CI/CD Foundation or any other person, they have no need, they see no need, they see no urgency to make the CI/CD tools interoperable. Right. So let's talk a bit about what kind of initiatives, what kind of like programs, what kind of activities the CI/CD Foundation and other people in the open source community have undertaken to kind of like start slowly driving commercial service providers and driving open source teams to understand the importance of interoperability, that it's to the common goal of everybody like who is in CI/CD, that CI/CD tools are interoperable. So we're going to look at some of the things that has been going on regarding this. So now let's discuss what has been done on a more institutional and more foundational, more like global level to kind of like bring some sort of interoperability in CI/CD pipelines. There are a lot of companies that have kind of like shown interest or kind of like came forward, kind of like drive other companies or drive all participants and all people in the open source community as well as commercial vendors to start thinking seriously about interoperability. One such initiative is the Special Interest Group, which was created in 2019. And the Special Interest Group, the SIG, is within the Continuous Delivery Foundation, so the CDF Foundation. And the Special Interest Group, the goal that they have is basically to come up with interoperability. What is the meaning of interoperability, right, for CI/CD pipelines, for the CI/CD ecosystem? So they want to kind of like define exactly what interoperability means and how everybody should understand interoperability, right? So they are also championing the need to collaborate, right? They are kind of like explaining all different participants in the ecosystem why it's important, why it's their benefit that they need to collaborate in achieving interoperability, right? In a neutral forum. And they are also kind of like showcasing the challenges that developers face, right, in CI/CD pipelines every day because of the lack of interoperability, right? And they are also kind of like exploring synergies between CI/CD projects, right? They are kind of like setting up small projects, and these projects are meant to build like synergies between different CI/CD systems, right? And the idea behind this, projects is like to build more collaboration, right? To build more communication and partnership between different CI/CD service providers. And the other thing that they are doing is like basically they want to reduce the need, right, for users to implement their own in-house solutions, because what is happening today, right now, due to the lack of interoperability, so in every CI/CD process or pipeline, if you look at it, if you study it, be it at Amazon, be it at Ericsson, be it at Google, be it at Facebook, be it a small startup, what happens is all the companies, they build their own like in-house custom solutions to make the different CI/CD systems interoperable, right? They kind of like build some hacks, right, to make the CI/CD tools interoperable. And one of the goals that the SIG team has is to make this kind of work that is being done, these hacks, like not needed at all. There is no need for it if the different tools and systems have interoperability, right? So the SIG interoperability project was kind of like proposed by Ericsson, and Ericsson is investing a lot of money and is really like serious about it, and it's open to other big enterprises, it's open to other small startups, right? And the Continuous Delivery Foundation is investing a lot of resources now into interoperability, and they have set up goals that they want to achieve for CI/CD ecosystem with the help of the SIG team, right? So that is it, and I'm gonna stay around for any questions that you have, and if you have general CI/CD questions, we can discuss it. If you want to discuss interoperability issues that you have faced, we can discuss it as well. If you have some interoperability experiences to share from your work, from your own CI/CD pipelines, it will be very interesting to hear. Yeah, so yeah, I'm Michael. I'm from Education Ecosystem, and I'm going to tell you a bit about Education Ecosystem and then answer any questions you have. Thank you. Education Ecosystem is a project-based learning platform for experienced developers. We basically train developers on how to build products using real projects. We are a peer-to-peer platform. We have like very experienced developers that create projects, and then other developers use those like practical projects to kind of like improve their skills. On this slide, you can see some examples of projects that were built on Education Ecosystem, and these are cloud-native projects, and you can check them out if you want. Yeah, so I have come to the end of my presentation, and this is like our website, this is my email, and this is our Twitter. If you have any questions, I'm sticking around, and yeah, we can do the FAQ. Thank you. Okay, great. So some questions have been asked, like what are some of my top recommendations for the CI/CD Foundation? I would say number one is to focus on achieving interoperability between open source and between non-commercial solutions, because it's very much easier for all these open source groups, for all these non-commercial service providers to kind of like make their tools, interoperable, right? Because one, they don't have any economic interest. They are not doing it for money, right? They are just providing their solutions to the open source, to the community. They don't have any like intent to make money. So it's very much easier to kind of like bring all these groups to the table, or to define certain common standards that they will follow when they are kind of like building the architecture, building their solution. So it's very easy to kind of like define a set of common standards that they use in building their products or their new releases, right? So that's like the top recommendation. When it comes to like commercial service providers, it's going to be very, very hard because like there's a bit of a dichotomy between what their main goal is, right, to making money, to differentiating themselves, versus what the CI/CD Foundation wants them to do, right? The only way that I think they are gonna jump on board, right, is if they have a benefit, if they get a benefit from standardizing their tools, right, or from from following certain common defined standards, right? Just like in the automobile industry, there are different car manufacturers, right? All these different car manufacturers, in the best of their own interest, they follow certain common standards, right? Even though they change, their car looks different, their car model, their engine might look different, they follow certain common standards, right? And these common standards, they do it because one, they have an economic benefit, right? They have a benefit, they have like a user benefit, they have a customer benefit. So I think like if the end users, that means companies that buy, that purchase this CI/CD solutions, right? If those users, right, start to require that if I'm gonna buy if I'm gonna buy your solution, that solution must be compatible with this and this standards, right? So it's also a bit of like education of the buyer, companies that purchase such solutions, that they start to require that the CI/CD solutions that they buy are compatible, right? Are compatible with like certain basic industry standards. I think that will help a lot. It's just like if somebody buys like if you buy like buy any electronic device and you expect it to have an adapter that works with other laptops, like So this is how I see it. I compare it like with Android phones, right? If you take like Android phones and if all Android phones could have the same charger, technically all Android phones could have the same charger, right? But still, some Android manufacturers, phone manufacturers, still try to make their chargers a bit different, right? So it's a very similar situation, and I think like there is no one trick point in fixing it, but it can be done from different angles. And the way you can approach it from for commercial solutions is going to be very different than from the open source solution. The open source solution is like lowest hanging fruits, right? Because one, they don't have any commercial interest, so you can the CI/CD Foundation can approach these open source groups very easy. They are easily accessible. They are very happy to kind of get input from people, and they will be very happy to work with other open source groups together that are also building CI/CD tools, right? So even if there's a Java CI/CD tool, if there's a Ruby CI/CD tool, they'll be very open to kind of like have common defined standards that all the different open source groups follow, right? Because like I think if the open source groups actually have common standards, right, and these standards are embedded in the CI/CD solutions that they release, right, what is gonna happen is the end users are gonna go for these tools, right, instead of the tools that don't have any like interoperability. Why? Because they will realize the benefit of it, right? And if they realize the benefit of it, the other solutions and the other service providers that don't have interoperability are gonna suffer, right? Because if the end user uses a solution that is interoperable and another solution that's not interoperable, they will see the difference. They will see the benefit immediately between the two, right? And like I said, on the commercial side, it's gonna be the hardest part, but on commercial side, it's gonna be one showing them clearly and quantifying the benefits for the commercial service provider, why he should make his tools and his solutions interoperable. And second, providing like second, educating the buyers of this service of these commercial solutions to like request to demand interoperability. Let me just go on the second question. The second question is, are there concrete deliverables in the works for this interoperability SIG? So the group just started, the SIG groups just started. They are still, as far as I know, they are still working out. Details and what their main goals are going to be, what they will achieve. They are still working it out. As far as I know, there are no concrete deliverables yet because they are still in the beginning stages and still exploring things. They are still trying to find partners and they are still trying to bring on board like the big players, in the industry, especially the commercial players. Because interoperability is always going to be achieved if like the big enterprises, like the main big players in the industry play along, right? Because then it's going to be like an industry-wide standards. As long as as soon as the big players are on board, right? This kind of like a paradigm, this new way of working, this kind of interoperability that we all wish for, it's going to be like a new way of working, a new way of like CI/CD processes. And as far as I know, this is where they are right now. The CI/CD event has a concrete deliverable. We are working on a standard vocabulary communication for CI/CD system to talk to each other. Yes, and Andrea wrote that they have like concrete deliverable. I mean, I think Adam was asking more like, Adam was asking like more specific, besides the general, mission that they have. He was asking more like whether they have a specific defined, metrics and goals that they're trying to achieve, like for this quarter, or for next month, or this year. I think that's what he is asking about. Okay, So basically, the other questions that I just got privately were they were not directly with they were not directly related to interoperability. They were more directly related to CI and what is CI, what is the difference between CI and what is continuous integration, what is continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Yeah, so these terms are used a lot, and continuous. Just to keep it simple. Continuous integration, just imagine it as that you have a source code, you have written a source code, and that code is written on a repo somewhere, right? And then you write some new changes to the code, or you write a new feature, you write a new code, as part that is going to be used as part of the existing source code. So now the new code you have written or changes you have done in the code, you need to kind of like integrate it into the code that you have already written. So that's like continuous integration. So integrating the code that you have written into an already existing code, right? So that's what you can call continuous integration. And continuous integration triggers every time a build, right? So every time you make changes to the code, it's gonna trigger a build, right? That's basically the idea behind continuous integration. And because you have made a change, we're gonna have like a new build. And continuous delivery is like the code that we have just integrated, we're going to push it to specific environments. We're going to push it either to a dev environment, you're going to push it to either a staging environment, or you're going to push it to production environment, right? And this is where continuous deployment comes in. Continuous deployment is the idea that every code that I deploy, from dev development to staging, it gets automatically deployed, right, to the production environment, right? So ideally, what we want to achieve is like an automated pipeline where changes that we make, right, that we make to the master branch, the production master branch, that they get automatically deployed, and that's like continuous deployment, right? And there are kind of like different tools and different service providers that have like different solutions for organizing and setting up your continuous deployment. There are other, I think there are other presentations that go more in depth about continuous integration, continuous deployment, and this talk is more about interoperability between different CI/CD solutions. Let me see if there's any other question. Let me see. Right, I don't see any other question. Let me see the other question that I have here on my list that I got via email, and I think that's it. Yeah, somebody was asking if I was part of the CI/CD Foundation. No, I'm not part of the CI/CD Foundation. I'm just a person who is interested in interoperability, and I'm just interested in CI/CD processes, CI/CD tools. And I've been following CI/CD interoperability discussions online a lot. And I'm gonna see how I can contribute somehow to the SIG team. Any way I can help, any way I can promote awareness about interoperability. I think a lot of people don't even think about interoperability between the different tools and solutions they use, because they don't know that there's another way of working, right? So as today, a lot of teams, they build like their own solutions, they build their own apps to make their different tools interoperable. And that's the unproductive idea, is to kind of like work in a new environment where whether you're using solution A, solution B, solution C, all of them can kind of like work together. Yeah. So that is the end of it. If there are no other questions, I will just end the Q&A and thank everybody for participating. It's a bit early morning for me in California, but I hope I answered some of the questions. Right. Okay, thank you, everybody.